We're going to go live in about 2 minutes. I see that Corona, Cyclonus, and Unholy are already in the chat room. I'm going to be doing the 9 o'clock this morning for Lenny. We're going to talk a lot of baseball, but I don't know if you listened to Phil Chaplin and I last night from 7 to 8:30. I understand that Andrea is going to replay that sometime later today, but we really dove deep into some fantasy football last night. So it was one of the funnest shows we've done, and maybe it'll air a little later today. And you guys that maybe didn't catch it last night can catch it later today. So if you want to hear some fantasy football being discussed, that's where we'll be. And we'll get started with our baseball talk in about, 30 seconds or so. We're going to talk about what a great night in Fenway Park last night for a certain family. And wow. And it was a family affair. There were a couple of things that happened family-wise yesterday, and then some guys coming back from injury. One pitcher got hurt. We'll look at standings and wild card scenarios, and the scenarios are like crazy. So we'll take a look at all that in just a minute. How about that? But I'm glad to see Corona and Unholy in the chat room this morning. So here we go. We'll get ready in just a sec. Can you hear me okay? If you guys are already listening, if you can give me a sound check, it would be fantastic. Good morning. It's Wednesday. It's September the 18th, and we're winding down a most exciting baseball season. And so this morning, welcome to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. Lenny and Andrea are traveling today. Lenny called me to see if I could do the 9 o'clock. Glad to do it. And so I'm happy to be with you and all you guys in the chat room. Corona, thank you for the sound check. And let's dig right in. Let's go a little highlight action real quick before we get into the standings and the box scores and hot hitters. And I've even got a little segment this morning on impact rookies, both trending up and both trending down. But first of all, 17 years to the date after Craig Biggio had hit for the cycle, his son Kevin Biggio in Baltimore last night returned the favor. How about that? It was in 2002 against the Rockies, September 17, 2002. Craig Biggio hit for the cycle against Colorado. And last night in Baltimore, Kevin Biggio, 17 years later to the date, hits for the cycle against the Baltimore Orioles. What a family night that had to be for the Biggio family. Now, that was exciting, but in Fenway Park last night, everyone, I guess, by now knows the Mike Yastrzemski story. 6 years in the Baltimore Oriole farm system. He's traded to San Francisco. He's now a regular in the Giant lineup. And this week, the Giants are in Fenway Park. It's his first time ever playing in Fenway Park. And the significance there, of course, is his Hall of Fame grandfather, Carl Yastrzemski, who hit 237 home runs over his 23-year career in Fenway Park. Hall of Famer, number 8. Grandfather, 80 years old, in Fenway Park last night, watching his grandson play against his beloved Red Sox, and Mike Yastrzemski homers in his Fenway Park debut with his Hall of Fame grandfather there to watch. Now, that had to be, and when Mike Yastrzemski looks back at his career, I don't know what accolades he will accumulate, but I gotta believe that as he looks back at his career, he thinks about last night. He thinks about his 80-year-old Carl Yastrzemski Hall of Fame grandfather being at Fenway Park, watching the game, watching him homer against the Red Sox. He had to grow up pulling for the Red Sox. Can you imagine not? And he walks into the park and homers. Good morning, Corona Cyclonus. Good morning, DK Lush. Good morning to Ken Flamea. Good morning to Royals 29 Boom, Kevin Hastings. And good morning to Timothy Hooker. Yes, this is Arnie. Lenny and Andrea, as you know, are traveling. And so you get a fill-in this morning And I guess, lucky or unlucky, you get me. Here we go. So those are two family affairs last night. More highlights. Two pitchers came back from injury yesterday, and both were excelling. Okay? For the Brewers, Brandon Woodruff started a game. Now, he was on a pitch count. He only pitched 2 innings, but it were 2 shutout innings for the Brewers, and he struck out 4 in those 2 innings. So it was a great return to action for Brandon Woodruff, and that's exactly what the Brewers need, as they are, I'm telling you, coming off the deck, fighting like crazy for that second wild card. And we're going to talk about that second wild card that the Brewers are now tied for in the National League. What a renaissance, losing Yelich and going on a tear like they have. And it just shows you, we talked about it a little bit last night on our football show. I said it before I went on the air officially. I think Andrea is going to replay Phil Chaplin and our fantasy football show that went from 7 to probably about 8:45 last night. The last 20 or so minutes were baseball related, and we talked about teams rallying. Good morning, Phil Chaplin. I'm plugging you right now, buddy. How you like that? We talked about teams rallying when you've lost key players. We talked about it in terms of how the Brewers have done it, how the Cubs will have to do it. You know, the Cubs are now without at least 2 signature players in that lineup. But last night, the Brewers get Woodruff back. He pitches great. The Brewers win last night. You've got a deadlock in that second wild card. Wow. Also, returning last night for the New York Yankees, Sevi's back. Yes, he's my picture on my show preview today. Severino back for the Yankees. 4 shutout innings, 4 strikeouts. And Severino is a key, a huge key, a piece to that rotation coming back. And I said this a month ago on my show here on the air on the podcast. If you think Severino is going to come back and now pitch as a reliever, you better think again. He's going to be in that rotation. He's the best they have, and he's going to be stretched out pretty well by the time the playoffs get here. I'm looking at the schedule. He should have 2 more starts, going 4 innings last night. Look for him to go 5, maybe into the 6th in his next start, and maybe up to 6 or 7. Now, I'm not saying the Yankees have to do that, but I am going to say the Yankees will have the opportunity and option to do that because he will be stretched out by the time the playoffs get here. And some more just plugs here. Sano hit a homer last night. The Twins now have 5 players with at least 30 home runs in their lineup. Wow. It was against the White Sox. So that's some history there. 5 players with 30 homers. The Astros, they win their 99th last night. They are close to their 3rd straight 100-win season. That's something that only 5 teams in Major League history have done throughout the history of Major League Baseball. Only 5 teams have had 3 in a row 100-win seasons. The Astros, 1 win away. Do you think they might get it? I mean, really? I mean, they're like 10 games left. I got a feeling they're going to get that 100th win. May get it tonight. Who knows? But kudos to the Astros and that big win. Good morning to that guy. Let's look at who's in the chat room this morning. Corona Cyclonus, DK Luce, Doug Boyle, Ken, Phil, Kevin, that guy, Timothy Hooker. A few more little plugs here. Oakland last night, they keep winning. They beat the Royals 2-1. They win sometimes by scoring a lot of runs. They win sometimes by scoring just a few. Matt Olson, a 450-foot bomb. What a player Olson is. He missed 6 weeks with a hamate broken bone in his hand. He's got 30 home runs now. He'd have 45 if he'd played maybe this year. He's in that lineup playing great defense, hitting for higher average than we ever thought possible. And last night his home run was the difference in the game. So those are some highlights. A low light, Phil Chaplin and I talked about it briefly last night. If you haven't heard, the Pirates, Felipe Vasquez, he was arrested Tuesday on charges of computer pornography, solicitation of a child, and providing obscene materials to minors. He has been placed on the restricted list by Major League Baseball. His season is over. I'm not sure about his career. We talked about earlier in the season at the trade deadline how he was a key piece, a possible key piece to a team obtaining him at the July 31 deadline and having him for the playoffs. The Dodgers were in play for that. They wouldn't make the trade. The Pirates didn't come off of it. The Pirates front office jinxed. When they do make trades, they're screwed. When they don't make trades, they're screwed. I wish the Pirates would call me and say, hey, we haven't made the playoffs in so long. We'll give you a 1-year contract. Be our general manager for 1 year. Let's see how it goes. It can't hurt. I know a lot about baseball. I know enough to know this. The Pirates are going nowhere fast with the general manager and management ownership direction they're taking now. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story, we got a young man, Felipe Vasquez, who's in trouble. It's unfortunate. It's sad. A very talented player. And more than just fantasy, this is real life. You know, I've got a legal background. I sat on a bench. I've been a lawyer. I know what these charges mean. You know, you can be accused of being a murderer and you can be acquitted and you're not a murderer. You're charged with something involving a child and it sticks. It sticks. Court of law means innocent until proven guilty. So let's hold off passing judgment. Let's see what the evidence is. But it's not looking good for Felipe Vasquez. Let's turn the corner. I want to talk just a moment with you about, and I thought about, and I'm still thinking about, doing an entire show on this subject. Impact Rookies 2019. And I want to just go through, these are not in any particular order. I just want to talk about some rookies who have been trending up, in my opinion. I want to talk about some rookies who've been trending down, in my opinion. Mike Soroka, I got to do my song for you. Mike Soroka, telling you, what a great season. What he's doing for the Atlanta Braves. And, we look at the pitching for Atlanta, their record. Of course, they've clinched the American League. American League. They're not in the American League, aren't they? They've clinched the National League East. Soroka, a big part of that. You look at the numbers alone, 12-4, 130 strikeouts, a 2.57 ERA, a 1.09 whip. His last outing at Washington on the 13th, 6 innings, 1 hit, no earned, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. Is Soroka Atlanta's Game 1 pitcher? After last night, maybe so. He's been the most consistent player they've had. How about some more players? How about Brian Reynolds for Pittsburgh? Second in the National League in hitting at .322. He's got 37 doubles. He's got a .903 OPS. The power, I think it's going to come. The average is there. Now, I just talked about the Pirates and their front office. I will say this. Reynolds, that's a great decision. A great decision. And so, another impact rookie. And I'm not going straight to the rookie of the years here. I'm digging deep for you this morning because I think it's just such an interesting thing. How about Luis Urias for the Minnesota Twins? Have you looked at his stats lately? Guarantee you cannot get him on waivers for your fantasy playoffs. Urias, second base, third base, outfield eligible. Not a lot of power, but he's hitting .354. Over his last 13 at-bats, he is 7 for 13. Again, multiple positional eligibility, a .354 average, and I'm not sure, but that means to me he also has a high on-base percentage if he's hitting .354. Another impact rookie. Here's a guy who started out the year not exactly killing it, but he is heated up of late. Have you been looking at Victor Robles? Yeah, let's hear it for Victor Robles. Over his last 15 at-bats, He is 8 for 15. That's 6 games. And it's 5 games. In those 5 games, they've not been against weak sisters of America either. They've been against the Cardinals, at St. Louis, and against the Braves. Yes, 8 for his last 15. On the year, 82 runs scored, 17 home runs. He leads all rookies with 26 stolen bases. Where does Robles get drafted next year in fantasy? He has really turned it on here in the second half. His average now up to almost 260. And he plays the heck out of center field. I haven't even mentioned the Rookie of the Year in the National League, which I must, Pete Alonso. What an impact rookie he's been. And at the start of the year, was he even going to be their first baseman? It was between he and Smith during spring training, remember? 48 home runs later, 93 runs scored later, 111 RBIs later, Pete Alonso going to be your National League Rookie of the Year. Impact. Fernando Tatis Jr. Some just sort of forget about him. I haven't. Injured, out for the year, but what a great talent. When he was injured, he was hitting .317 with 22 home runs. 35, 40 home runs a year? Sure. He had 16 stolen bases. Can he steal 30? Sure. He's a 30-30 guy waiting to happen next season. Jordan Alvarez, are you kidding me? You know I love Jordan Alvarez. I've got him on every fantasy team I have. Again, I could do a whole show on this. Maybe I should save some of this. .316, 26 homers, and he's only played in like 80 games. 50 homers next year? Sure. Bo Bichette, .315 and 197 at bats. Now, there have been some rookies that have concerned me this year. Nick Senzel, out of position, hurt again. Austin Riley came up like a ball of fire, cooled off dramatically. He's got to figure some things out. The great thing about being a rookie is you have time to do that. Dylan Cease, not off to the great start he wanted to be, but he all he has to do is look at a teammate who turned it around in 1 year. Luis Urias for San Diego hit only .215 with a .642 OPS. Not been the splash the Padres wanted, but there's always time for these guys. So just a little throw in there. You may have other rookies that you want to talk about that you think have been super impactful. Those are some I think have been. Let's look at wild card scenarios and how you break ties this morning. Woo! American League. Oakland has a 2-game lead for that first wild card, playing home against the Royals today. Tampa in the second catbird seat. They're leading Cleveland by a half game. The Tampa Bay Rays, I said this Monday, these games against the Dodgers are critical. They lost last night 7-5. Play the Dodgers again today. Meanwhile, Cleveland beat up on Detroit 7-2. They're playing at home against the Tigers. Only a half game separates Cleveland from Tampa. National League. That's the best Phil Chappie. National League. The Washington Nationals have the first wild card by a game and a half now over the 82-69 Chicago Cubs and the 82-69 Milwaukee Brewers. And so it seems the Milwaukee Brewers and the Chicago Cubs have the same record. That would mean they're tied for the second wild card. The Brewers have now won 4 in a row. They beat the Padres last night 3-1. Home again today against San Diego. I read earlier where the Padres have put one of their rookie pitchers on the shelf for the year. We'll see how that turns out. Looking at some football stuff here. I don't know. In the chat room, I think I've gone way too far. You ever do that? You hit a button and, man, you're into yesterday or something. Is that Back to the Future or something like that? I don't know. Chris Paddock's been shut down for the Padres, so they won't see him in this series. So let's talk about for a moment what happens in the event of a tie. So if two teams tie for a division title, probably not going to happen this year because the division races are so out there. Now, St. Louis only leads the Cubs and the Brewers by 2 games. If there's going to be a tie, it's going to be in the Central. And we know the Cubs and Cardinals play 7 more times before the end of the season. So it's a possibility. If the Cubs and Cardinals were to finish the season tied at the top of the Central, they would play a 1-game tiebreaker on Monday, September 30th, and home field advantage will go to the club with the better head-to-head record. As of today, they've played 12 times, and the Cubs hold the edge right now. They've won 7 of 12 against St. Louis. The winner of this game would advance to the Division Series round, while the loser would either head to the wild card game or head home, depending on whether it qualifies for the wild card or not. What if 3 teams tie for division title? Because it could happen. Cardinals, Cubs, and Brewers. What if they're all deadlocked? Each would receive an A, B, or C designation. Club A would host Club B on September 30th, and the winner would host Club C the following day. The winner of that game would be the division champ. It's almost like a draft. The team with the first pick can choose the scenario it likes best. Would a team rather play 2 games than 1 if it gets to host both, which is why a team might choose to be Club A over Club C? On the other hand, a club could choose Club C designation if it wants to rest a certain pitcher and take its chance in a one-winner-take-all game, even if it's on the road. How about that? Scenario, 2 teams tie for the best record in the league or wild card. This would not involve any extra games if the Yankees and Astros finish tied for the best record in the American League. The team with the better head-to-head record, that would be the Astros, 4-3, would get home field advantage throughout the league championship series round. Remember, home field advantage in the World Series is now determined by best regular season record. As for the wild card, let's say the Rays and Indians were the only 2 clubs in the American League wildcard position at season end, and they had identical records. They would not play an extra game to determine who gets in. It would go home field to the team with the better head-to-head record during the regular season. But if 2 teams tie for the second wildcard spot, American League, Rays, Indians, or National League, Cubs, Phillies, just making up teams, they'd have to play each other on September 30th for the right to advance to the National League wildcard game the following day. And home field advantage would go to the team with the better head-to-head record. What if 3 teams tie for 2 wildcard spots? American League. If the Indians, Rays, and A's are all tied, I love this legal stuff. The 3 teams would choose and receive A, B, and C designations. Club A would host Club B, and the winner would advance to the wild card game. Club C would then host the loser of the game between Club A and Club B to decide the other wild card team. Again, the 3 designations are decided by head-to-head records. The A's went 9-4 against the Rays and Indians. The Rays went 9-5 against the A's and Indians, and the Indians went 2-11 against the A's and Rays. What does that mean, Arnie? That means the A's would have the first pick of the designation, and the Rays would pick second. Is that enough for today? I think so. Wow. So we've talked about wild cards. We've talked about wild card scenarios. We've talked about standings. We've talked about some rookies. So shall we talk about some box scores from last night? Yes, the Yankees beat the Angels 8-0. LeMahieu continues to rake 2 for 4. Torres continues to rake his 38th homer, 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs. Gio Urshela 2 for 3. Maben 2 for 3. And I told you already about Sevi going 4. Losawiga pitched the 5th and 6th, no hits, 3 strikeouts. Tarpley pitched an inning in the 3rd, struck out 4 batters. Guerin went 2/3 of an inning, and Chase Adams finished it out with a scoreless ninth. Shutout for the Yankees against the Angels. I'm only going to talk about games involving playoff-relevant teams this morning. I told you Cleveland beat the Detroit Tigers 7-2. Plutko went 6. Quality start. Struck out 6. 2 earned runs. Carrasco pitched a perfect ninth with not a perfect ninth, he did walk 1, but no hits and no runs. Carrasco, what a story. Comeback player of the year, right? You get leukemia in May, and you're pitching in a major league park in September. What a story. What a rallying point. Mercado went 2 for 5. Puig went 3 for 5. Luplow 2 for 3. He's an interesting player. He only plays against left-handers, but he's hitting 282. And when I look at playoff scenarios with Cleveland, if he doesn't match up well against the Astros because their aces are right-handed. But every other team, Paxton's a lefty for the Yankees. The A's have left-handers. If there's a wild card scenario, he could be a key player. Atlanta and Philadelphia, the Phillies clinging on to hope. Looking at the standings, I didn't talk about the Phillies this morning in the wild card race, but I will pause and do that. The Phillies are 4 games out in the wild card, 9 games to elimination for the wild card, fighting for dear life, and last night they win. They beat the Braves 5-4. Harper, 2 hits. Perella, 1 for 2. Drove in 2 runs. Vasquez went 5 innings, struck out 8. He gets the win. The bullpen gave up a couple of runs, but check this out. Suarez a hold, Hughes a hold, Alvarez a hold, Parker a hold, and Neris gets his 27th save. And for Atlanta, Keuchel, he is too inconsistent for me, guys. 5 innings, 5 runs. Telling you, he's just not consistent enough for me. Kevin Hastings says, that means we're talking Royals. We'll talk Royals in a minute. How about that? Acuna got a hit. Albies a hit. 8 hits for Atlanta. Again, Phillies win 5-4. Padres, Milwaukee. The Brewers just continue to roll. I told you about Woodruff. Bullpen went 7 innings, only gave up 1 run. Paddock, his last start of the year, he went 5, struck out 9, gave up only 1 hit and 1 run. The Brewers only had 4 hits, but they scored 3, so how they do it? Well, Kane hit a homer, his 9th, off Paddock in the 3rd. And Mike Moustakas, the game winner, yes, his 35th, in the 7th inning off Strom, and the Brewers continue to roll. There's something about them, I'm telling you. Minnesota and the White Sox, 9-8. I told you Sano hit his 30th. There was a lot more to it than that. Lamare hit his first. The center fielder went 2 for 2. Arias 3 for 5. I talked about him earlier. Gonzalez 3 for 6. Rosario 3 for 6. The thing that concerns me about this box score for the Twins is the pitching box score. Perez only 4 2/3, gave up 10 hits. May pitched an inning and a third, gave up 2 hits and 2 runs. Harper, an inning, 2 runs. Littell, 2 innings, a run. I'm not impressed with this Twins bullpen, but for Duffy, I like Duffy. I've liked Duffy. He's been on my fantasy team for a while now. An inning and 3 strikeouts. Hitting for the White Sox, well, they were hitting. Tim Anderson went 4 for 6. Jimenez 3 for 7. He's up to 261. Moncada got a couple of hits. McCann a couple of hits. Yonder Sanchez a couple of hits. Engel a couple of hits. 20 hits in total for the White Sox, but only 8 runs as they fall to the Twins, and the Twins hold on to that central spot. St. Louis and Washington going at it. Washington winning it. Corbin, no earned runs in 6 innings, 11 strikeouts. Rodney gets his 14th hold, and Hudson gets his 4th save. 2 innings, 1 hit, and 2 strikeouts. Kendrick went 3 for 4. Robles 2 for 3. For St. Louis, Nicholas pitched a quality start, but he gets the loss. He's 9-14. 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. Hitting, Molina went 2 for 4. They only had 6 hits. No other player had more than 1 hit. St. Louis falls. I love that Central. It's like attrition. Speaking of, the Cubs lose to the Reds. The Reds have had the Cubs number all year, it seems. Sonny Gray, great starting pitching. Sonny Gray, 6 2/3, 9 strikeouts. Yu Darvish, 7 innings, 13 strikeouts. But the Red Bats, Aquino, who has been in a funk, a major funk. He got a homer. He went 1 for 4, but he got a homer, his 16th in the first inning with 1 on against Darvish. But he's hitting way under 200 over the last 2 weeks. I don't like Aquino in fantasy right now. I dropped him. Votto back in the lineup, went 1 for 2, had his 30th double. Cubs, 5 hits. Are you kidding me? 3 of them by Kyle Schwarber. His average is up to 239. He went 3 for 4. Horner got a hit. Zobrist got a hit, and that's it. Castellanos 0 for 3. Bryant 0 for 4. Contreras 0 for 4. Caratini 0 for 3. Hayward 0 for 4. The Cubs have got to hit better. Play the Reds again today. Oakland and Kansas City. Here you go, Kevin Hastings. Are you ready? Oakland 2, Kansas City 1. See, there's just not a lot to talk about today because Merrifield went 0 for 4. Mondesi went 1 for 4. Soler did not hit a home run. He did go 1 for 4. Lopez pitched 6, quality start, 2 runs given up, 4 strikeouts. Oakland, they just find a way, don't they? Olsen, I told you about earlier, hit a 450-foot bomb. Seth Brown went 2 for 4, drove in a run. He's hitting 386. Brett Anderson pitched 5 effective innings, gave up only 1 run. A.J. Puck pitched the 6th and 7th, 1 hit, 2 strikeouts. Soria pitched the 8th, no hits, 2 strikeouts. Hendricks, the save, is 23rd, pitched the 9th, 2 strikeouts. So in the last 2 innings, 4 strikeouts. The A's bullpen holds serve. But I've said it all year, so I'll talk about you, Kevin Hastings, a little bit. And Andre, you're right. Votto's 30th double. He's a doubles machine these days. He could be helpful. Kansas City, is there a worse team with more fantasy-relevant players? Look at the top 4 in their order. Merrifield, Mondesi, Soler, and Hunter Dozier. I'd love to have all 4 of those. In fact, I do have 3 of them on one of my teams. But they fall last night to the A's 2-1. And finally, as we look at the relevant games, Tampa Bay and L.A. in Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers win 7-5. Bullpen game for the Dodgers. Ferguson started. He was the opener. Urias pitched. Floro, Stripling, Baez, Kolarek, Maeda. Jansen gets his 30th save. What's significant about this? Blake Snell returns, a 3rd injured pitcher. Went 2 innings, started the game. No hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts. I watched him. He looked great. Very Blake Snellish. Andrea is ready to go watch the Royals play, and now she's saying, Kevin Hastings, give her some help on where to watch the game at the stadium. So please help her. They're traveling today. They need to know. This is important stuff, Kevin Hastings. I'm counting on you to come through. Your Royals lost, but you're used to that. Help them out, my good friend. Tampa Bay, batting. 5 runs. Pham 0 for 5 at the top of the order. Meadows got a hit. Nobody really tore it up. That's why they lost. They go at it again today. And the blow-up was in the middle innings. Fairbanks gave up 3 hits and 5 runs and only got 1 out. That was the difference in the game. So interesting night of baseball. We got a close race. We talked about how playoff scenarios will be resolved Real quick before I get out of here, a couple of hot hitters for you. And I'm talking again about players who may be available on waiver wires, because I can talk about some of these guys and they're never going to be there. Randall Grichuk hitting .320 over his last 7. Garrett Hampson hitting .478, 11 for his last 23. Danny Santana for Texas, .353, 6 for his last 17. Howie Kendrick, 10 for his last 17, a .588 average. Omar Narvaez for Seattle, a catcher, .391, 9 for his last 23. Kyle Lewis in Seattle, .296, 8 for his last 27. Nico Horner, maybe he's available, maybe not, but he's hitting 9 for his last 28, a .321 clip. All of these guys possibly available. If you're in playoff time and it's playoff time and you're still in it, these are guys that are hot right now. You want to grab them if you can. If you've got somebody who's not hitting well, these are people that can help your team. How about Todd Frazier, 6 for his last 16 for the Mets, .375. I had to dig deep for these guys. I'm not giving you Eugenio Suarez, you got him. I'm not Nolan Arenado, you got him. How about Brandon Nimmo hitting .313 over his last 7? Shed Long, 10 for his last 28. The Seattle second baseman, that's a .357 average. And then Mel Rojas, finally, .345, 10 for his last 29. Guys, these are people, I know Phil Chaplin Hampson was a disappointment, but he's been hot the last 7 days. And if you're in a fantasy fight for a championship, I want who's hot now. I can forgive you, Hampson, for what you did in June and July if you can help me now. And he's got speed and he can hit, and he's playing in Coors Field. So there you go. Guys, it's been a great morning. Thank you for being with me. Lenny, Andrea, safe travels. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 10. And until then, good day. Watch some baseball from Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports.